ADO .NET Architecture. This is a natural but accelerated evolution of the ADO, the older technology, and older architectures before that. ADO just didn't fit to what we needed to do with the disconnected way we need to work and the distributed nature, like when we're dealing with the web. So ADO.NET is going to be natively based on XML and the incredible growth of the XML standard. We can work very easily with XML, with our data, in ADO.NET. We're going to be targeting distributed and disconnected web type. This is going to be the scenarios we're going to be dealing with. This is the new way to do. And this is going to be a distributed model that's going to replace the older client-server model. ADO was dealing with the client-server and is trying to fit that square peg into a round hole, and it didn't work. So, much more organized we are. The technology and the object models are a lot easier to use. This was an important part of Microsoft's strategy. Make it easier. Don't give so many options like with the ADO way of doing things. Streamline it. Give you an entry point that's going to make sense, and don't overdo things with too much of an extensive object model. Automatic connection pooling as well is definitely helping us out with managing the connections to the databases. Data is integrated with multiple heterogeneous sources, and oftentimes the data and the different parts aren't aware of where the sources are coming from, just as long as it abides by the contracts of the data and the commitments between the data. Now we're talking about database classes and the data classes that make up the namespaces within the .NET framework. We're really talking about a managed extension of OLEDB is what we're going to be going after. There's unmanaged things as well, but we're talking about managed. This is within the .NET universe, of course, and how things are managed. The database classes and data classes are going to manage and optimize interaction to a data source. That's your database, XML, files, etc., whatever you can consider a database these days. This is going to target distributed and disconnected web type scenarios, like we mentioned with the earlier slides, but this is actually going to be applying directly to database classes and data classes. The .NET Data Provider Object Model is going to deal with a connection command, a data reader, and a data adapter, and very important to actually provide a streamlined way to go about those things, as I mentioned. Now we're working with a data set, and this data set is an in-memory store for client data, in memory. It's primarily, or we're primarily going to be concerned with the data provider, data set, data adapter, and data reader, like I mentioned. We'll talk about these. A data set. In-memory client store for our data, like I mentioned. It's really a relational view now. It's dealing with tables, columns, constraints, rows, and the relations, how they relate together. A relational view. You can build that relationship as well. Very interesting. You can hold one or more tables, which is different from what the record set had in ADO. You can only have one table. Now you can have one or more tables. And you can also save as XML with a schema. So if you're really into XML, this is the thing for you, let me tell you. Now, a single data set can be populated from multiple sources. Important to keep that in mind. The commands are, or could be, select command, insert command, update command, delete command, and your table mappings, important parts of the data set. The data adapter. Now, this is going to manage the interaction between a data source and a data set. And this is going to fill or update, what have you, for your data set class or your data table class. And we're dealing with the mappings between tables and columns. The data reader. Very, very cool, the data reader. It's fast, it's forward only, it's very similar to other things that are reading and writing within the .NET universe. This is strictly dealing with reading, and it's fast because it is forward only and read only, and you can see XML in the same capacity in the XML videos. This is how we're going to access our data very fast. This is going to work like a socket or a stream, like I mentioned, and the results are going to be returned as the query executes. It's important to note that results are going to be returned as the query is executing. Much better. And we're also going to be dealing with the allowance for working with strongly typed access. So let's dive into some work with ADO.NET.